Are we live? I think we're live. Let's kick it off. Yeah. Oh, let's put in the bass. All right. What we got here today? Put your name in the... Tell me in the chat where you're from. See, King Gaming is back. We got William. We got Clever Goat. Where are you guys from? Let's welcome you to the stream today. We're gonna do a little welcome riff. Sounds good. Welcome to the stream today. Yeah. Welcome to the stream today. Yeah. Welcome to the stream today. Woo, yeah. Welcome to the stream today. Woo, yeah. Alright, see who we got. We got, reverb. We got Poland. Joshua's here from Vancouver. We got Romania, Lancashire, New York, India, France, Hungary, the Netherlands. Clever Goat says, let the show begin. Hey there, Luciole24. Haven't moved since Saturday. Ignatius from Russia. We got Tobu from India, Philippines, Texas, Lebanon, Ontario. Hey from Norway, Israel, France ×2. Very nice. Hello from Switzerland. We got people from all over the world. Welcome to all of you. London, Austin, Minnesota. Hey from France. Missouri, how are you today, Tim? I am doing okay, King Gaming. We have a very special guest on the show today. I would like you to give a very warm welcome to one of my favorite YouTubers. He is they are the creator of the very popular music theory program 12 Tone on YouTube. Welcome, please, Cory Arnold. Yeah. Welcome to the stream today. Oh, yeah. Welcome. There you go, Cory. Do you feel welcome?
Very welcome. Thanks. Thanks for having me.
I wasn't sure if you could hear the whole looping. I thought it might be really weird to do all that. I don't know. I've been having fun with this this COVID talk show format, trying to make it a little bit more colorful as the days goes on. Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm good. I've been, just working from home, which is not a huge change for me. So I've been keeping relatively busy, but not much change. Yeah.
It's in some ways our lives are changed less.
Yeah.
Than the average person's.
Yeah. There's some YouTubers who go out and film on location, but like for us, it's been. I do most of my work from my bedroom or my kitchen table anyway, so
yeah,
it's been. But yeah, and you get to see all the the late night hosts trying to do what we do, and realizing that their stuff just doesn't work in that format.
And they don't have any audiences anymore. Like I'm surprised they haven't tried to like bring back like the canned laughter and like canned applause.
The laugh tracks
and things. Like at least do it as like a gag.
Yeah, or something. I don't know.
Because there's
like Seth Meyers had did you see the Seth Meyers one? He had just went on a rant mid thing about how hard it was to be a YouTuber.
No, that's very nice of him. No, what did he say?
No, I appreciated it. It was just at one point, it was just like, yesterday I had to throw out a take because a bird wouldn't shut up. And it's like, I live on the path of 2 different airports. I don't know what you want from me. But
you were telling me before we got on that you have a pretty defined schedule, eh?
Yeah, that's what I tried before. For a long time I was doing weekly video, but I still keep I know which days I'm doing what. I guess usually obviously there's research first. I don't schedule research because who knows how long that's going to take.
Yeah.
But then script writing is Sunday. Audio is script writing Saturday, audio Sunday. Monday is animation directions, which is today, which is where I just decide what I'm going to draw. Tuesday I actually film, and then Wednesday is editing. And it just it's kind of conveyor belt factory production line approach, but it works.
I don't know.
And it gets the videos out. So
I mean, the fact that you're making like at this point you're making like 12 to 14-minute videos
Yeah.
every week is
Yeah.
that's damn impressive. Like I don't know if
Thanks.
I know anyone else who's, well, like aside from like the insane, I don't know, like daily vloggers of the world.
Yeah.
Like in our space, like the educational space, like do you have any help, or are you doing it all
So
yourself?
I work with my sibling, who
Okay.
so does script review to make sure that I don't get too esoteric. So they don't have like a music theory background, so they'll
Mm,
read the script and make sure like does someone someone who's reasonably intelligent but doesn't know this specific topic,
okay.
can they understand it, or am I just talking to just music theorists?
Yeah.
And so that's sort of how I try. And obviously, as my videos can get pretty complicated anyway,
Yeah.
but it's always useful to have a second set of eyes. And then they also like help me when I'm doing the animation directions, and whenever I'll sometimes get stuck and be like, I don't know how to represent this, and so I'll just write down for now, just like doodle on the theme of whatever, like doodle on the theme of
Yeah.
freedom, or doodle like whatever, and then just like before filming, we'll sit down and talk those through, and then also when I'm filming, they'll just like keep an eye on the shot to make sure the page stays aligned because I can't see the camera from where I'm
Hmm.
sitting.
Yeah.
So
I'm really missing, like, uh, prior to this year I had a roommate who's similarly, like, he's his hyper focus isn't like
yeah,
science education, but at the same time he's like knows a lot of science and is like interested in a lot of like science fiction
yeah,
stuff, and was like, the thing that his name was Luke. He got married and he moved to the South Shore of Montreal now, and
yeah.
I don't, like, I can still
Well,
send things to him, but like
congratulations to him.
having that like daily, yeah, congratulations to Luke. Hey Luke, if you're watching.
Yeah, but no.
um, but like having that daily person around where you can just be like, hey, come look at this. Like, what do you think of this animation? Like, it's not working. I don't know why it's not working. And like,
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, I found that like I discovered a lot of my videos sort of in back and forths with people.
yeah. No, I think that's really important. Like a lot of sort of my narrative voice. Like I don't do this anymore,
Mm,
but like for a long time, I was doing script swap with Jade from Up and Atom.
okay.
Uh, and so like we would send each other scripts, and sort of we wound up stopping, I think, largely because I produce like she stopped producing as many videos, and I still produced a lot, and so I was sending a lot more scripts than she was sending, and so it wasn't really fair.
Right. Yeah.
And so we were eventually like this. I think we were at a point where we got what we can from each other anyway, and but like a lot of sort of my like I developed a lot of my like narrative voice from that, and also I
Mm.
previously, even before that, I was working with Inace from Draw Curiosity and doing
Oh,
the same
cool.
thing. So I've been sort of having that back and forth, sending my scripts to someone, getting another set of eyes. I think at this point I've largely internalized a lot of what they were saying on those sorts of things anyway, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And so it's not as relevant to get that feedback on any specific script because I can sort of look at it and be like, well, what would Jade say? Uh, but like it was definitely really helpful to sort of get someone to come in and just be like, I'm not sure this makes as much sense as you think it does,
Yeah.
because yeah,
Yeah. Seeing it from outside, it's like, so you find that you've gotten to the point where like now they're little like angels on your shoulder. You can you can tap
yeah,
into Jade and Ace.
yeah. No, it's just just like go through the script, read it out loud, and I can sort of hear it's just like that didn't work. Don't do that. It's just like okay, but no, it was really helpful, and I think you know any creator is going to have blind spots.
Yeah.
Any like if you're coming, there's a reason like most musicians work in bands and work with producers. It's like a reason producers have a job is to come in and be another set of eyes effectively. Like that's a little oversimplified for the people who actually like know stuff about the music industry, but that is a significant part of a producer's job
Yeah.
is to come in, hear the music fresh as like the thing you've spent like months or years working on and have decided that you've got to the point where it's perfect. They can come in and be like, well, you didn't hear this part because you got too
Hmm.
focused on whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Did you
so
find it? Did it ever become easier for you? Because I find like every time it's like for me it's still like a new little ego shock every time I have something that I'm like, this is like, I really think this is good, and someone comes in and they're like, I don't understand it. Like,
yeah,
you gotta
well,
change that.
the trick is to never believe that anything you've ever made is good. That's largely been my approach. So
Oh,
people come in and be like, there's these 5 problems. I was like, really, only 5? All right.
That's a interesting, because I think when I don't believe anything that I've ever made is good, I stop creating. Like
Yeah.
I have a real trouble of like motivating myself if I don't.
Yeah,
I
no.
don't, like I almost have to like overinflate my sense of myself just to get a project done.
That's interesting. I don't know.
Yeah, so
I definitely overstated as for comedic effect, but I do genuinely like approach a lot of my stuff as like, this is going to be the best it can be, and and that's part of like how I get stuff done on a weekly basis,
yeah.
is that there's very little sort of sitting around and reflecting and being like, well, could I do like 20 hours of work to make this 5% better? Like, I don't have time for that. That's, I think, when I started, I had the weekly schedule. I think that was really important in building that mentality, just
Yeah.
because that way, I can produce. And sort of like, like, I think it was Jonathan Colton's Song a Day thing.
Okay.
It was a project he did a long time ago now. I think that was like when I was in high school. But he wound up just like, his goal was just like write and publish a song every day. And like, he did some fun stuff. He did some stuff that didn't work, but it was just like, at the end of the day, it's done, it's out there, and you can move on to the next song. And it's a great way to sort of flex a lot of different muscles quickly, because when you get like really like hyper focused on one project or one like iteration of a product, then you wind up like not building a lot of the skills that like you can get through quickly. And so then I don't know. I found it very helpful to just have a publishing schedule for a long time.
Yeah.
And
That's definitely been one of my downfalls
yeah.
for the past lifetime of my channel, is that like obsessing over one thing,
Yeah.
wanting that to be perfect to the exclusion of all else. Like this has been, I don't know, this has been a bit of a, I don't know. I feel like I'm on a pretty good learning curve on this live streaming thing, because this is the 11th one, and already I'm looking back at my first ones and being like, okay, we figured some stuff out. It's there's something about doing that scale. That would be really cool to do, like a song every day.
Yeah,
it'd be a real challenge.
Yeah, no, especially like if you're doing a bunch of like acapella layering and whatnot, that would be.
I mean, I guess so, but who knows? Like you start with something that's, I don't know,
something you can do.
Have you seen Jacob Collier work? Have you caught any of his like I Harm You streams?
No, I haven't.
Man, that guy, like he's got just a mess of hotkeys going on in his Logic sessions. So like when he's trying to do like a bit of an acapella thing, it's just like all right, that's good. Perfect. We're moving on. It's like, whoa, like you watch him and it's just like this brain, like the tsunami of information.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and maybe that's just from like doing it over and over and over. And like,
yeah, I mean, it's a lot of what Jacob Collier does. So
yeah, I don't know. Do you get a lot of requests to analyze his stuff? I feel like I probably have a pretty big overlap.
Fair amount of requests, yeah. It's I mean, if I'm being honest, like a lot of sort of the main criteria for what songs I want to analyze are songs that I like. And like I have a lot of respect for Jacob Collier. I don't listen to a lot of his music, It's not the sort of music I like. I think he's really good at what he does, and I don't want to take that away. And I also think he's an interesting theorist. I've made a couple videos about sort of the ways that he talks about music.
Yeah.
And like sort of the harmonic dualist principles behind that and whatever. But like,
wait, can you explain what harmonic dualist is?
Oh yeah, sure. So harmonic.
Is this like his like light side, dark side?
Yeah, so the perfect fifths are bright, happy. Perfect fourths are sad, and they're sort of like the major and minor.
Let's test this on the audience.
Yeah.
This is perfect fifths. Well, sort of. I mean, they're 2 cents flat or whatever, but and perfect fourths. So this is supposed to be, according to Jacob Collier, happy, somber, sad, something like that.
Yeah, and there's sort of like from a music theory perspective, those intervals are sort of the same but upside down.
Right.
So going up a perfect fifth takes you to the same note that going down a perfect fourth does, in octaves. But
yeah.
And so And if you go back into like the 19th century, was this huge debate among, serious theorists about relatedly, like whether major and minor chords were actually both effectively a thing, whether they were both independent things, or whether the minor chord was just an upside down version of the major chord.
Right.
And that's harmonic monism.
Mirror images of each
yeah.
other.
So yeah, in the same way that a perfect fourth is an upside down perfect fifth, a minor triad is an upside down major triad.
Yeah.
And so you have this camp of harmonic monists who are like, no, the major triad's the only thing that exists. That's oversimplifying, but I have a whole video if you want the more detail.
The only thing that exists.
Yeah, there's no, but
we're gonna reduce everything down to like this one triad. Okay.
All music sort of comes from the structure of this major triad, whereas the harmonic dualists were like, no, the minor triad is also its own separate thing, and they sort of built models that would sort of make them equivalent, whereas the monists were building models that made the major triad primary and more important. And so you get this sort of back and forth of arguments about like, when you get into like overtones and all these complicated like scientific arguments, because it was the 19th century and they had to make music into science somehow. But
hey, we can still try.
We can still try.
Look, you're talking to a musical scientist here. If there's a way to turn music into science, damn it, I'm gonna try to find it.
I mean, you're turning science into music. That's completely different.
True, but you gotta have backflow one way or the other.
Yeah, but no, it's like you had this whole thing, and I think like if you follow that sort of philosophical line to Jacob Collier, I think it's really interesting. And then there's there's a bunch of stuff they talk about, like negative harmony that caused a huge sort of explosion a while back, which is a related thing, where basically you take chords and then sort of flip them around an axis within the key. So you sort of pick a point, usually halfway between the root and the fifth.
Yeah.
And then just take all the notes and just sort of flip them around that like a mirror. And then you sort of get that sort of dualist approach. And then that also theoretically is supposed to lead you to other chords that have the same basic behavior. So the classic example is like the 5 dominant becomes 4 minor 6. And that's supposed to resolve to 1 in the same sort of way. If you want to play that, I don't have a piano.
Okay, but, so in the major key, we've got like a dominant 5 dominant going to resolution. So then you're trying to flip over these two keys, like between those. So in this one, the 5th becomes 1, 1 becomes 5. The major goes to minor, so then you're ending on that, and then. The 5 goes, you invert it over there. Wait, okay. So I'm confused.
The 5 becomes 4 minor 6.
Okay.
So if I don't know what key you're in, but
I'm in C right now. So we got C.
So yeah, F minor 6 or D half diminished 7, whichever is easier.
That. So then flip that over and you get like that.
Yeah.
4 minor 6. No, that's not right.
Like F, A flat, C, D.
F, A flat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's supposed to sort of resolve in the same way.
Oh, because you had the dominant 7 in there, so it would be
like
there's the chord to the resolution, and then Ooh, I mean, I like it.
Yeah,
it's a cool sound. I like the going to the major there.
Yeah, no, it's a really nice sound, and it's sort of like that was a big thing that blew up, and I think that a lot of the music theory world sort of turned around and looked at like the argument, and was just like, I'm not sure this means as much as you think it does, because that chord works great. But then that's the only example anyone ever used,
okay.
And so you go look, and then there are other examples. There are other things that like show that this model can produce things that have the same behaviors.
Well, I've seen some negative harmony like inversion covers of popular songs that have had really interesting results. Like there's a pretty popular one on YouTube of What a Wonderful World, I think, and it like they invert the melody and the chords around this axis, and it's a really different feel, but it actually does like work as a song.
It does work, yeah. And and that was sort of what I was interested in when I started looking at it. It's just like, if this works for chords, then it works for individual notes, and that sort of gives you these clear pairs of notes that behave similarly, and if you take the same sets, then you get the same results, and that sounds more complicated than it is. I'm not sure I explained that well, but again, I did a whole video about this. Uh,
Yeah, well,
but yeah.
all the intervals are respected, right? So and
Yeah,
if you're just flipping over the axis, so if you've got
but
this
upside
tritone,
down.
yeah,
So the
tritone
tritone does,
to
yeah.
a minor six, which is the same as a major third.
Yeah, so the intervals are respected in terms of, well, I mean, sort of. The thing is that they're respected relative to the mirror point, the reflection point, the place between the. So, like for instance, the minor sixth becomes the major seventh, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Which isn't really the case relative to any note in the key. It's not respected relative to that. It's respected relative to this point halfway between the major and minor thirds.
Yeah.
And so you get this thing where, like, you can sort of look at those and be like, oh, so the major seven resolving up to the root feels kind of similar to the minor sixth resolving down to the fifth.
Yeah.
And that these have the same sort of directional pull to them. And that, becomes, I don't know, I think a more interesting.
In those chords, it feels more like it's like the tritone leading to whatever it is, the minor. So like, there we go, that, and then it's the same thing. It's the same two notes on top, right? So I guess that sort of makes sense to me.
Yeah, no, I think it makes sense. It's I lost track of my point.
I'm not sure. We were talking about Jacob Collier. But like, do you think?
No.
So, I don't know. Where do you fall on the trying to turn music into, like, your job is music theory?
Yeah.
When we've talked before, I felt like you're a little more on like the, I don't know what you would call it, like postmodernist side of music theory in terms.
I'd say so. Yeah.
The theory of music is what you make it.
Yeah.
But do you think that there are any points to be made of turning music into like a science?
So I think basically my view is roughly no, but with caveats.
Okay.
I think that there's stuff that we can learn from scientific approaches, right? There's stuff we can learn about like timbre through like spectral analysis. There's stuff we can learn about, perception, musical perception through like psychological study. And there's all these things but I think fundamentally music is a cultural phenomenon much more than it is a physical one. Like we look at like music is fundamentally like sound waves in air, sort of. But the problem with that is that like we ascribe so many different layers of meaning to those sound waves. There's so many levels of abstraction between the actual physical vibrations that your ears pick up and the experience that you have hearing them, that sort of trying to look at them as sort of in these sorts of mathematical and scientific approaches, I think tends to fall flat. And that's not to say that you can't do like social science or whatever, or like study those things. But I think that, well, one of the main things, for instance, is that like if we look at musical like vocabulary across cultures, and like because we've seen a lot of people do this pretty haphazardly, and they'll look and be like, okay, we're seeing the same sort of behavior in cultures around the world now, and they'll be like, well, this proves that this is a fundamental thing. But you go back and it's like, well, in like a couple hundred years ago, the Europeans were exporting their culture at the end of a gun, like across the world, and they were sort of there's like explicit efforts to force other cultures to adopt their musical standards as a sort of like way to bring them to Christ or whatever. And so if we then look at the music of like different cultures now and be like, okay, so this is all doing the same thing, this must mean that this is fundamental to how we experience music, that misses out on the fact that it's hard for us to know what those cultures were doing 500 years ago. In a lot of cases, we don't have recordings. A lot of it's not written down, and a lot of it was forcibly stamped out. And so we don't have the data to sort of run effectively randomized trials or run like separated trials. We have one interconnected trial, and we can't take out that one complicating variable that was European cultural colonialism.
Right. And like many of these things, it would be easy to resolve if you had a desert island full of children that you could randomly put into control groups at birth and expose them just to particular tone sets or whatever. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
And
realistically, that's
yeah.
probably not going to happen.
And
But I've
yeah,
always like on the flip side of that, I've always been a little wary of like people making like large anthropological um pronouncements out of like exception cultures, like
yeah,
because I think it's also very easy to say like, hey, we found a small group that does things differently, and we're going to use that to like invalidate a rule that like might there there could be
yeah,
many different exceptions that lead to that one particular exception. And
yeah.
so
That's yeah,
do you see any like do you think there are like global patterns? Because like you could say, okay, well, like there's gamelan music that completely
yeah,
defies like the tone system, or like the
yeah.
Western
Like
sort of
the yeah Western concept of
yeah,
tuning.
harmonic series
Yeah,
string based tuning system.
yeah,
But you could also say that like for example, a two-dimensional instrument doesn't actually have that harmonic structure, right? Um,
yeah,
like so it could be that if you look at just along like cultures with stringed instrument that have one-dimensional vibrators instead of two-dimensional vibrators, you would see commonalities. Or I don't know, you've probably looked into this
yeah.
more than I
I
have.
mean, it's hard to answer for sure. I think that more or less sort of my resistance tends to come from the fact that this stuff gets done poorly very often,
Hmm.
usually by people without a background in sort of music studies who will sort of come
Right.
in and just like, well, I'm a physicist and I'm just going to do physics to it, and then like declare that this is the case and just like not speak with any music theorists, any musicologists. And so that's not to say that I am confident that there is no sort of underlying commonality that could be found.
Hmm.
It's just I don't know how to go about finding it, and I don't know how one would, and I don't know how meaningful it would be if we did. Is sort
Okay.
of my
Yeah.
my view.
Okay.
But like that's sort of yeah,
I want to talk a little more about that, but
yeah.
as the streamers have come to know as a common fact of me, I've once again forgotten to plug in my laptop, and if I don't do it, the stream's gonna die. So I'm gonna leave you. I'm gonna leave the viewers for a moment with a little loop. And you can use this opportunity to take a little drink of water, as Cory has just done. I'm gonna be back in 1 minute. I'll take you off the screen, Cory, so
Okay.
you don't have to like entertain
Just sit
people.
here.
We'll be back in a
Okay.
moment.
Okay.
Hey, look at that. And we are back.
We're good.
We're back with Cory Arnold from 12 Tone. I hope that was a real good. If you haven't done that if you haven't actually hydrated since then, this is your hydration tone. Please take out your water and begin hydrating now.
Well.
This has been your hydration break. All right.
Hey.
Yeah, I think so the physicist in me is gonna push back a little bit.
No, go
I
ahead.
think because the one thing like something that I can't honestly tell you how much of this is like bias on the part of having someone tell me that I like something and finding out that and deciding that I in fact do.
Yeah.
But one of the realizations recently that I had like I could never figure out for a long time why there was something about like a cappella choral music that hit me really hard and like affected me the way that um like a lot of other music just like didn't have quite the same capability of doing. And it was
Yeah.
particularly like the harmony of it. Like there was just something blissful about a cappella choral music that like I couldn't get anywhere else. And I think I figured it out when I realized that like it's the difference between equal tempered major like chords and like
Yeah.
uh
And just
what's the opposite?
intonation.
Yeah, and just intonation chords. And like when you hear like a I don't know like a barbershop quartet like lock into that third, um,
Yeah.
and like there's no beating or resonance or whatever. Like there's this like thrill to it that I recognized before I knew that was a thing, and then when I found out it was a thing, it was like an explanation of my previous psychology. And so like having that knowledge that like there's something sort of in the physics of like the harmonic series that actually predicted my appreciation of music, I think puts me a little bit in a different like theoretical box.
Yeah, I mean, and that makes sense, and I think that there's, like, I think that part of that is that anything you like is going to have an explanation somewhere,
True.
and so what the fact that you liked the thing and then found out what the explanation was isn't necessarily indicative of that being natural.
Mm.
It's just, but like that is a very signature part of like barbershop quartets and a lot of a cappella music,
Mm-hmm.
because the human voice can sort of tune continuously. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to like a fretted guitar or a piano where you have to decide your segmentation. You can sing theoretically, as long as you have the training and the right vocal whatever's for it, you can go to whatever note you want, any pitch, any frequency.
Yeah.
But like I think that sort of one of the things, like for me, when I listen to like equal tempered chords, like by default they kind of sound a little out of tune to me,
Hmm.
like just
Okay.
because I'm, oh, not equal tempered, I mean just intonation.
Okay.
When I
So
listen to
just
just
for the people who are not
yeah,
music theorists, equal tempered is the one that's based on like the modern piano. All the semitones are the same distance apart. So there's your major third on an equal temper chord. On a just intonated chord, it's about there. It's a little flat compared to that.
yeah,
So if you've got good ears, you can probably tell the difference between that a little bit. That's what we're talking
yeah,
about.
but
So
yeah,
that
it's
like that chord, that actually like the third sounds flat to you.
a little bit like it's not like it sounds bad. Like there's
Hmm.
like I've spent enough time looking at tuning whatever's, but I listen to so much contemporary music.
Yeah.
I don't listen to a lot of acapella stuff. I don't listen to a lot of barbershop quartets. I listen to like pop and rock mostly,
Hmm.
and so like in those everything is equal tempered, and so it becomes very natural for me to hear like equal tempered thirds as correct. And so that's sort of what my brain has adapted to. And that's not to say that like if I hadn't been raised on like just intonation, I wouldn't appreciate that more. I think that's sort of part of my point, is that it is sort of culturally relative what you get used to.
I think
And
yeah. I
yeah,
think there is an element of that for sure. Like for
yeah,
example, I have a friend who has perfect pitch, and like perfect pitch to the point of like she can recognize like an
yeah,
A440 precisely.
yeah,
And so music that is off of that pitch will bother her.
yeah,
And like that is a crystal clear example of this has been taught to you, because there is
yeah,
absolutely nothing in the heavens that gives you a particular value of a particular frequency value of A440, unless you're one of those people who's really into 432 and the brain
yeah.
resonances. But
The
even
whole thing,
so,
yeah,
if you were, that's not her case. For
yeah.
her, it's 440 is good, and if it's off, it's weird. This She doesn't understand this color.
Yeah, no, I had a teacher who had perfect pitch,
Mm.
but the piano she learned on, I believe, was a little out of tune,
Oh
was a little
no.
flat, and so like everything sounded a little sharp to her. Uh,
Was it at least in tune with itself? Because that would
yeah,
be
yeah, that's to the best of my knowledge. I mean, this is, I didn't hear the piano itself, but there's sort of, it just seemed like like all the notes were
yeah.
just a little bit sharp because the piano she had trained her like perfect pitch on was a little flat.
Yeah.
It's like a couple cents or whatever, or a couple hertz. Hertz, that's the one I'm looking
Hertz.
for.
Yeah.
Oh, cents works. Cents works too.
Yeah. So a
Yeah,
cent is a hundredth of a
of a half step.
of a
Yeah,
half step, and a half step
yeah.
is nothing particular in hertz because
No.
it's on a log scale.
Yeah, because hertz is logarithmic. Yeah, or
Yeah.
hertz is perceived logarithmic, but written linear.
Yeah.
So cents is how to convert hertz into logarithmic whatevers effectively.
Yes. Which is like, in terms of actual like hearing perception,
Yeah,
we don't perceive hertz. We perceive pitches.
we
Right?
perceive much more. I mean, it gets a little more complicated than that, sort of in terms of, like, we hear different registers a little bit differently, just because of the way our ears evolved. But like the basic thing is, we perceive hertz on a logarithmic scale, and therefore cents or half steps or whatever the intervals we use are a better way of describing what we're hearing.
Yeah.
Than yeah.
Do you know how precisely like because the way your ear works, you've got basically this Fourier transformer of a cochlea that breaks down the signal into frequencies and resonates little hairs that work at. I don't know how precise those frequencies are. Whether it's like there's like one hair cell that has a precise frequency, or whether your brain is doing a bunch of calculations of like this band is resonating and the peak is right here, and we're gonna figure out where it is.
I mean, I'm not entirely sure. That's a good question. I know that in consecutive notes, the just noticeable difference for a well-trained person is something like 5 to 10 cents, depending on register. But so there is some range that your ear will just hear as like, oh, that's the same note.
Yeah.
But so if you play them together, you can hear the beating, and that will change things. And that's, I think, how a lot of like piano tuners, for instance, will like be able to hear more precisely and get the tuning, is like they play it against another note and you have the beating, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not a piano tuning expert. If that is incorrect, I apologize.
I know there are piano tuners who can have like one note tuned and do the entire piano without ever going back to a tuner, which is crazy. Because I think in piano tuning, you actually do adjust the bottom register to be a little off of like precise equal temperament. Yeah.
Yeah. So my understanding basically is that most pianos are tuned with slightly wide octaves. So the idea is because the perfect fifth is a little bit flat in equal temperament.
Okay.
And so to sort of compensate for that, what they do is make it so that like the perfect fifth plus an octave, so the perfect 12th is correct, is like a perfect 3-to-1 ratio, which is what you're supposed to get according to sort of just intonation theory. And then so you get like octaves that are wide by like a fraction of a cent, and like fifths that are flat by a little bit less than they would be otherwise, and that sort of averages out. But as you go sort of to the extreme ends of a piano, that drifts. That's my understanding.
So this is an interesting test of like which theories we have heard and latch onto, maybe because of our priors, because the explanation that I remember being given and latched onto was that you had to do that more for an upright piano than a grand piano. And the reason why is because an upright piano has thick wound strings that are short on the bottom end. Whereas a grand piano has like some amount of winding, but the strings are much longer, so they can be less wound. And the more you wind the string, the more you differ from the standard harmonic series on a string. So you're going to get your harmonics on the string are going to be a little sharp when you're winding it really thick. So you got to tune the lower end down so that the harmonics line up with your higher notes. So that had been my understanding, which is a much more physicalist.
That makes a lot of sense too.
Understanding of why you would do that.
Yeah. But I'm not a piano tuner. I think it's possible that everything I've said has been completely wrong. So
I don't know. I can tune guitars because you have to, but do you play so you majored in voice?
But voice, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I haven't warmed up in about 5 years, but I'm technically have a bachelor's in vocal performance.
Oh man. I don't know, looking back on it, would you recommend it with some like as a thing for someone to do like a music degree?
To do like a music degree in general?
Yeah.
I guess it depends what you're trying to do. I think the thing is, like, if you're trying to work as a musician, no one cares about your degree,
Mm,
right? You're not going to like show up to a session and it's like, yeah, you sound great, but do you have a master's?
yeah.
Like, what was your GPA? Like, that's not how the music business works. No one cares. And so, if you're just trying to work in the music industry, I think that it can be valuable as a way to develop your skill. And so if you're going to take it seriously, then I think you should. But like I, saw a lot of people who go get a music degree, like and just will skip through classes and whatever, and just not really just try and make sure they pass and
Right.
get the degree, and they can show that they have a degree, and that's not useful. Having the piece of paper, unless you are trying to teach, unless that's which is sort of is why I got a bachelor's originally, was like my plan was to teach,
Mm,
and then I needed to show like schools that not only was I good, but that I had a piece of paper that said I was good, and so then that was the reason I did that. But then a lot of people I know who wanted to be performers, who wanted to go out there and like be the next famous whatever, um, were just like sleeping through ear training, and it's just like, well,
yeah.
why bother? Like,
Yeah. You're
why
just
not just not take the class?
your
Like,
career is.
yeah,
I mean, your career is not going to be made by
yeah,
your professors giving you a passing grade. People have to
yeah,
actually like what you're doing once you get
yeah,
out into the world.
yeah, and I think there's a lot to be learned at a music school, and it depends on the school too. But there's a lot to be learned at a music school if you are taking it seriously, doing it right. And I think that if you want to be a working musician, you can learn a lot of the skills you need at a good music school. But there are also a lot of sort of when you get to the sort of more academic side of things, I think that they are very useful if you want to do music academia.
Hmm.
Like if you want to be a music theorist, then yeah, getting a good like music theory background is useful. If you want to be like a classical composer, getting a classical composing background is useful. But if you just want to be like a performing rock star or whatever, then I think that it's definitely useful. You just have to be careful about what program you go to
Hmm.
and what how you treat it, what you try to get out of it, and what you put into it, because that's what's going to determine whether it's worth anything to you.
I think there's something about school that also works as like if you're a kind of externally motivated person though, and like
Yeah,
if you're not looking for it as like I'm just gonna pass, but like for me, one of the things that I found that like is that I don't think I've ever worked harder than when I was in school.
yeah,
And I think one of the reasons why is that honestly, I'm just like a very agreeable individual and I can't stand letting people down. And so if I have like five or six professors that I can't let down and I need to do as best I can, then for me it was like, all right, I'm gonna like hunker down and do nothing else and like put in the work and go to bed late and
yeah. I think that that's certainly true. I think it's very useful for motivation too. Like I had, when I was doing the bachelor program, they had ensemble like every Friday, and so we would had to like learn and perform the song and with the band and everything, and there was like other performance classes and all that stuff. And I was just like, I have to actually learn this song. Like I have no choice. This is it's good for sort of learning the schedule, like we were talking about earlier. We're just like doing a thing over and over with a deadline where you have to be done doing the thing and move on to the next thing
yeah.
is useful for like building that habit of getting this stuff done, and b just like building the skills you need to do that stuff and do it quickly. Uh, I think I was going to say something. I had a thing. Oh yeah, that was it. It was like in one of the things like in school, like throughout the time, like I kept hearing from my teachers, everyone would always say is just like, you are never going to practice as much as you are right now.
Hmm.
You are like, no time in the future will you be doing as much like vocal exercise and vocal work as you are in this program. And I was like, that's not true. I'm gonna keep warming up. I'm gonna keep doing this. I take it seriously, whatever. And I graduate and immediately like, nope, I'm done. I don't
Yeah.
wanna like it's so much. You do so much and you don't even think about how much you're doing. Like
It's
I
there's
was
yeah,
yeah,
there's something about school that where you can make it your life and it's kind of like culturally accepted that this is your life and that you're going to
yeah,
spend all your time with it and like you have your friends or people in that program and they're doing it too and you
yeah,
hang out and swap things like I don't know, I can imagine like I think if I ever went back to school because I've already done 2 university degrees, but
yeah,
if I did go back, people always ask me, would you do a PhD? It's like, no, I would probably honestly do some sort of music thing because I think I
yeah,
find myself sometimes in a weird space where most of the people who are as musically skilled as me are more trained than I am,
Yeah.
and like it would be nice to sort of get into that world with them and like develop that
Yeah.
side of myself. But
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for music school as just setting aside the classes, setting aside the exercise or whatever, just being a place that you're in every day where you get to talk about music with people who are just as excited about it as you,
yeah,
and people who are just as interested in it and who like the same things and care about it. And you can sort of, it just sort of normalizes a lot of a lot of those thought processes and a lot of those approaches, and just makes it a lot easier to think about music as your primary thing.
yeah.
And I think that it's hard to oversell the value of that.
What was your goal like when you went into music school?
So when I went to music school, when I first attended, my goal was just to be a professional singer. I wanted to be a famous metal singer.
A famous metal
Uh,
singer.
that was my goal. I was going to be the next Rob Zombie. Uh, it didn't work out that way.
Did they like? Did they have like what do you even apply to when you're going to do that? Because like generally I've seen
Yeah.
sort of streams for like classical or jazz or pop, but
So I went to a trade school that was more sort of popular or modern music focused, and they had a lot of rock stuff and like some metal stuff as well.
mm,
Like it was more oriented towards like rock and pop, but there was a lot of there was some jazz and whatever as well, and then there was like some metal tracks and stuff that you could do. Um, and so it was like I said, it was a rock style school. I don't want to name the name honestly because it
yeah, no
was a
problem.
for profit university, and like I'm not sure I want to give them free publicity.
Fair enough.
But you know, it's I got a lot out of it. I don't know that I would recommend it to other people, but I think that it was one of those situations where if you put in the work, you can get a lot out of it.
Mm,
But you know, I also had plenty of classmates who didn't put in the work, like I said, and
hmm.
got through. So again, not sure that I would necessarily recommend it as the best decision for anyone looking to, but it worked for me.
Well, I feel like one of the things because I'm like I was a metal kid too, and
Yeah,
like from about the age of 12 till I don't know early 20s, like that's what I was doing. I was focusing on like the drums and like the double pedal and doing all the like
yeah,
fast metal things, and it really like at that time there was more of a metal scene. There was like this the screamo thing going on, and the I don't know like sort of like radio metal of like Kill Switch Engage and whoever else it was. Um, but thinking about it now, it's like I don't really know if there's a like if there's a plan B for training yourself for metal because there's not really like workaday jobs the way like a jazz musician will like you know they might not be someone that like develops a huge following and is the next Stevie
yeah,
Wonder, but like they'll get gigs, they'll play in like
yeah. You can like
bars
book
and
weddings
you know
and
weddings and whatever else.
yeah,
But like
it's hard to book weddings as a metal drummer.
I mean I guess it depends on
Yeah, it depends who's getting
the
married.
wedding. But
But
I don't know. Have you seen those viral videos of like this drummer is at the wrong gig?
yeah, yeah, those are always fun.
Like you trained for one style and then you had to make do.
Yeah, I think that there's I think a lot of more overlap in terms of like, especially for instrumental stuff, between metal and a lot of sort of more rock oriented pop stuff. So you can still get session work.
Yeah,
You're not doing like like live performances as much necessarily, but if you're doing like tracks on like pop stars or whatever, tracks for pop stars, then you can probably make that work. I don't know. Although like I said, a lot of the thing about music school is that they teach you to sort of operate in different styles,
mm,
right? So like I said, I went in to be a metal singer. I came out, metal and rock was my thing.
yeah,
I could do hip hop, could do some pop depending on like range. I was a baritone, so a lot of pop drifts higher into the tenor range and wasn't easy for me. But
yeah,
I could do stuff as long as it fit. Uh, but like I had to take a jazz vocals class, and I had to do quite a bit of jazz in ensemble and whatnot, and I had to learn not necessarily how to be the best jazz singer in the world, but how to be passable.
yeah,
How to do it in a way that jazz players would listen to and be like, yeah, all right, fine, you know,
yeah.
which is as high as I was willing to aim with jazz and about as high as I got. So
Fair enough. Yeah, that kind of
uh,
like if I can hack it, I feel like
Yeah.
that's kind of the what I'm trying to get to with a lot of things
Yeah.
because what I'm doing is like moving around to different styles and I don't know, just trying to be whatever
Yeah.
I want. It's like
Just trying.
yeah, like I don't even think like I talked to I had another roommate who was an opera singer, and he was like, if you get like properly trained, you're probably gonna have to like pick your vocal range. Like you might even get to like sort of decide whether you want to like focus on being like a dark tenor
Yeah.
or like a baritone.
Yeah.
And I was like,
To
I
be
don't know,
really
man. Like I'm
specific.
like what I'm doing
Like,
right now. I'm trying to do like
yeah.
like
Yeah.
down for to do the bass parts, and then I'm trying to do
Yeah.
like to do like the
But no, like
fluty
a
parts.
lot of like classical stuff is just like, which octave and a half would you like to sing in for the rest of your life?
Huh.
And it's just like, all right. But pop vocals, a lot of that, to be a working pop vocal, like especially working session pop vocalist, you need like a professional probably has around 3 octaves at least.
Yeah.
And so you have a lot more sort of flexibility, and then you get people like having a wider range like is a good thing, is only lets you book more gigs.
Yeah.
And so
I think
yeah.
there is like a weird fetishization of range
Yeah.
sometimes where it's like,
Oh
oh,
yeah.
like this person has like a 6 octave vocal range, and you're like, okay, but like 99% of the time they're gonna use maybe
Yeah.
2.5 octaves
Yeah.
of that.
This they have a 6 octave range. It's like great. So they sing like a tenor,
Yeah.
like almost always. It's like occasionally they go up and be like, let me do some, but no, it's like,
Do
and I
this
used to like
open.
I'm not going to claim that I still have anything like this, but back in college when I was warming up, when I was doing all like the exercise and whatnot, like I said, I was a baritone, and so I struggled sort of above like mid G, mid A, so
Yeah,
that was sort of
that's
where I
about where I
started to
crack too.
really fall apart. But then like after that, like up in the high registers, I had like pretty solid power metal highs,
Nice.
and so like I could do Dream On.
Nice.
Oh,
Yeah.
I struggled with the normal chorus, but not the super high one. And so like I was one of the
What is that? Is that like a
A
that's the
flat 5.
say that.
Yeah, that sounds
Oh,
right.
oh yeah.
I'm
That's
not going to
extreme.
even pretend I can
I
still do it.
I
But
had to hit this A for when I did the Hallelujah chorus.
yeah.
It wasn't pretty. Like listening to it back now, it's like it's screechy. I think I'm pretty sure I ended up just like hard like auto tuning
Yeah.
it. It's like I gotta get this piece out. I can't
Yeah.
hit this note, and it was like mid December in a super dry apartment without any like humidifiers or anything. And
Yeah.
that was not a good.
It's rough.
In
But yeah,
retrospect, that
no.
was probably a very bad decision for my vocal cords.
Yeah, well, and
So,
they seem to have survived it, so
well, so far, I mean, I don't know. Like, I do think that it would be worth, getting some amount of, hey, am I sure that I'm doing this in a way that isn't going to give me like vocal nodules over time?
yeah, oh yeah. No, that's I think a big part of the benefit of especially like vocals, because the thing with like guitar, like there are ways to hold a guitar that's wrong and that will hurt your wrist over time,
Mhm.
but like you can watch a video and have someone show you how to position your hand,
Yeah.
and you can look and see, is my hand doing the same thing? You can't really do that with vocals. Like I can't like open up my throat and
Yeah.
show you what I'm doing with the
Hmm.
chords, like
And there's things you can do that genuinely sound great
yeah,
and that are still unhealthy.
they're still, yeah, in the long term.
Yeah.
And you can develop nodes over like one bad performance if you really push yourself.
Yikes.
Like it's one of those things where like you can do permanent damage in a night, and it's not good.
Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
I don't recommend that for anyone watching who's like, oh, that sounds interesting. Don't, it's bad. But
That sounds. You know what sounds interesting? You know
you
what
know
I'm gonna
what?
do tonight?
Yeah, vocal node challenge, new
Permanent
YouTube
vocal
thing.
damage. That's just.
It's
I'm
yeah,
bored. There's a
yeah.
pandemic.
I've been to the internet. I know the stuff y'all get up to.
Yeah, that's possible. A vocal node challenge. I wonder if there were any serious like if anyone actually like from the cinnamon challenge if anyone actually did get injured. I haven't really looked it up, but that feels
I
like
don't
the
know.
kind of
Yeah,
thing that might have
yeah.
kind
No,
of
that was one
mess
of the
with
ones
people's
that was
vocal tracks.
more dangerous of the mainstream challenges.
Yeah. Did you do that
But
one?
no, I missed whatever cultural associations are required to like care about YouTube memes. Oh,
Yeah.
your YouTube challenges.
I think I just
So
had someone like just asked me at a party. I don't think I knew it was on the internet. They were just like, "Hey, you want to try eating a spoonful of cinnamon?" I'm like,
yeah,
okay."
yeah. I think I tried like the saltine challenge at one point, just in high school for similar reasons, which was just like try
I
and eat. I
presume
think like
that's a
5
similar thing.
saltines in a minute, and it's just like your body can't produce enough like saliva to actually dissolve all that, and
Yeah.
so and it's not pleasant, and you do it and it's over, and it's like, all right, well, I couldn't do it. Moving on. You know,
Wow, what an
it's my
amazing
life. That was
experience.
a fun. That was a fun one. Thanks for that. But yeah,
Yeah. Let's see what's going on in our chat if we've got anything good. Um, I saw someone up here. Where was it? Jan Hoffman said that they were at a wedding in October that had two punk bands and a black metal band. So I guess
yeah.
that is a
It's yeah, one wedding.
it's
I'm
not completely hopeless for
single-handedly
you.
keeping that industry
If
alive.
you
Yeah,
if Corey, if you want to get back in the game,
yeah.
there's
No,
a
that's
there's a plethora of one past wedding
yeah,
you could sign up for.
yeah. No, definitely looking to get back into the metal wedding singer game that I, you know, used to rule. I guess. I
I don't
did sing at a wedding once. It wasn't
yeah.
metal though, but my grandmother got it's a whole weird. My grandmother got remarried to
Oh,
my
sweet.
grandfather. That's a whole
Okay.
thing. Probably not worth getting into the details there.
Interesting.
But I had done Somewhere from West Side Story for my senior jury,
Okay.
and like she's like a huge fan of like Sondheim and Bernstein, and so wanted me to sing that at her wedding, and so I did. So I'm technically a wedding singer and a metal singer, so technically a wedding metal singer,
There
I
you go.
guess.
There you go.
Uh,
I've done a few weddings.
yeah,
Like just because I don't know. I a lot of my upbringing in music back in the day was like church music.
yeah,
So you know, when you're a church musician, you know a lot of people who get married for one
yeah,
thing, and then you know a lot of people who are like, "Hey, why not? Like,
yeah.
you can
No,
do it." So I feel like a wedding connoisseur. Like, I've definitely been to. I think I've been to more weddings because like it's like we're not gonna pay you like but
yeah,
we'll let you come to the wedding. Like you can sit at the
yeah. You
table and
can
eat
get
food
the
and
food
dance
and
and whatever.
yeah,
So I feel like I've probably been to more weddings than most people. Of
yeah,
people that I like kind of know in that weird half
yeah.
range.
Yeah, and I actually sort of just before like this whole world situation blew up,
Mm-hmm.
I actually like went back east for a friend's wedding, and it was like I think the first time I'd ever been to a wedding for someone who wasn't family, and it
Right.
was cool.
Yeah.
It was just no expectations of me, just sitting there in the audience, and then get to congratulate them on getting married, and then get to go eat food. It
Yeah.
was good.
Yeah. It's just like you're going to a party where these two
Yeah,
people are have decided to do a cool thing where they
yeah,
now they're together and I don't know. Yeah.
yeah. Good for them.
I appreciate it.
But, but yeah, no, so this is not the wedding connoisseur you apparently are.
Hey, maybe I can make that part of my brand. Tim Blay, acapella
Acapella
scientist,
science and weddings.
wedding connoisseur. Like not no, I can come and sample your wedding, and just like rate it. Start a daily vlog. Have you ever watched Four Weddings? It's an immensely bad TLC show about like four brides that agree to all have like a themed wedding, and then they all go to like each other's weddings and critique them. It's a I don't know, I had
Sounds
a
interesting.
it's a well it's not good. It's like I'm gonna put that up front. It's not a good show,
Yeah.
but I did sort of discover something from that show, which was that like there's a way in which watching and like I think people discover this in various ways
Yeah.
with like camp movies and whatever. There's a way in which watching bad media is a lot more fun in a crowd, in a group,
Yeah.
because it's if you're watching something good, like if you're watching I don't know, like a cerebral, I don't know, like an Inception or something,
Yeah.
or like something like a movie that's like it's an hour and a half, it's really tight, the dialogue's fast.
Yeah. If you're watching
Watch
something
it
you
by
want to focus
yeah,
on, yeah.
you watch it by yourself, you have a great time. You watch it with a bunch of people, you have the same great time as you would alone in a room.
Or
Because
worse if they interrupt you. Yeah.
yeah, or they're like saying, "What was that?" And you're like, "Shut up! It's the movie's going right."
Yeah.
This is important. But if it's a totally shitty piece of media,
Yeah.
then it's a party, and you're just there
Yeah.
like,
No, there's definitely like a lot to be like The Room is the classic example of that.
yeah,
It's watched with for a bunch of friends back in college, but it's for the most part, I don't know. I tend to try and watch stuff as like focused as possible, and but yeah, there's definitely if I'm watching something that I know is going to be bad, there's definitely value in having someone there to
yeah,
you know make fun of it with.
yeah. I feel like I'm pivoting more to intentionally watching not the good stuff with friends, because
Yeah,
I had a while where like I would watch something and love it, and then like show it to people, and most of the time spent watching the thing would be with me in my own head, wondering
yeah,
if that person is enjoying this thing
yeah,
as much as I enjoyed it when I saw it, and
yeah,
and like not being able to appreciate it. I don't know.
yeah. No, it's I don't know. Like I also find that like just this might be partly just like I'm autistic, and so like when I
Hmm.
watch stuff, I tend to like very easily get caught up in it and captivated in it, even if I know it's bad, even if I'm not enjoying it, I can
Hmm.
still be compelled by it.
Okay.
And so like I'll be watching something and like with people and like they'll not be into it and I'll not be enjoying it, but I'll still like if they say something be like, no, shut up, I'm trying to focus.
Hmm.
Like I want to know how this thing I don't like ends. I
What do you find that you focus on when you like when you watch a piece of media?
I mean I've found that I get I guess I'm more thinking of like TV shows and movies here, like
Okay.
just to sort of set premises here. But like I found that I focus more on like characters. If I'm not like if the setup isn't great, if it's like then I'm sort of focusing on sort of who these characters are, how they're characterized, what they're doing as people,
Hmm.
and I find that that can almost always with very like with exceptions like The Room, like again to say not to just turn this into a dunk session on The Room, although
It's I
the
don't think
world
it's
are
just the room.
the
Like in
world
fact,
already has, but yeah,
like there are
but
worse things to watch than the room,
yeah,
like, and there are pieces of media where like I really can't do that, because like you can have a bad movie where a character where like an actor really inhabited the role and
yeah,
like was human in the bad movie, but then there are also movies where like the character is a plot device, and like
yeah.
you can't
Well, yeah,
you can't understand their internal world because their internal world doesn't really hold together.
yeah,
And I
and
find I don't know, there's something that I sort of recoil from with
yeah.
those.
There's ones where like the actors are just like not good, like that.
Basic I mean,
But
it's like
yeah,
a combination of the actors aren't good and the writing is like, I'm thinking of like
yeah,
Hallmark movies,
yeah, yeah.
it's
That's
like,
true. And there's and in some of those cases, like I don't know. I also sort of as I get older get like less into like mean media,
hmm,
I get less into just like watching stuff that's bad to laugh at how bad it is because most of the time someone thought it was good and was trying to make something good.
yeah,
And part of the reason I bring up The Room so much and is just that like at this point Tommy Wiseau does not care.
yeah.
Like he got the attention he wanted and he is explicitly happy with that.
He's kind of
Like this is
yeah, he's a
yeah,
meme now, and he's kind of
yeah.
glad to be a meme.
Like and he worked like I watched The Disaster Artist recently and he
Hmm.
worked with them on that. Like he was this is not like
Okay.
made behind his back or anything. Like this movie that showed just like how ineffective and bad a director he was and how delusional his project was. He worked on that. He helped them with that. Helped them make that happen.
Yeah.
And so this sort of thing is just like I don't feel super bad for him just on the grounds that he doesn't care, and so I can sort of make fun of him more because he's in on the joke. Whereas
Hmm.
like a lot of these things, you watch it and it's like this is someone's like first attempt at a movie. They dreamed too big, but like it didn't really work. But like they were trying to do something, and they probably wouldn't appreciate the fact that like everyone agrees that their movie sucks,
Yeah.
and that it became this like well-known thing for being bad. When most things that are bad we just forget about, but a couple things just happen to stick around in the cultural consciousness, and that's I don't know used to be more fun for me. I think as I've gotten older, that's been become less. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you
Really.
know like I feel like that's more common now, that like people become a meme and like inhabit their meme. I don't know.
Yeah.
Have you ever met anyone like that? Like within like the YouTube community? Like I'm
I'm
thinking
trying.
someone like
Yeah.
a like I feel like Tayson Day has kind of done
Yeah.
that.
Tazon Days are good. Like I'm trying to think because like Captain Disillusion comes to mind, but that was very intentional on his
Yeah,
part.
no, he
He
like
made
that's
himself. He didn't become a meme. He made himself one, and
he's
so
a
that doesn't feel like
character
it counts. Yeah.
more than like
Yeah.
yeah.
But I'm trying to think of like Tazon Day is a good example. I haven't met him, but uh
Yeah, like I feel like
I don't know.
I don't know, the overly attached girlfriend girl
Yeah, so I leaned into
did
that.
that for a while.
Yeah.
Um
I think Scumbag Steve did.
mm,
Uh
yeah.
but yeah, no,
It's a weird phenomenon.
yeah, and the whole thing of just like people becoming memes and just sort of like the fact that like you as a person no one's heard of can suddenly become someone everyone's heard of without going through the proper channels. Like
Yeah.
it used to be like if you were going to be a household name, that's because you were a movie star and you knew what you were doing, or you were like a news anchor or something, or like a well-known person of some sort. But like these days, you know, someone can take a picture, someone else can upload it to the internet, and a third person can share it, and then suddenly everyone in the world knows who you are.
Yeah.
You have no warning, you have no anything, and it's
Yeah.
weird.
I like I mean, I feel that a little bit myself. Like did
Yeah.
you when you were doing like starting to do YouTube? Oh, same as saying Michael from Vsauce has kind of become a
Oh
meme
yeah,
himself.
that's true. Yeah, all the yeah
But he's I mean, he's still like he's him and
yeah.
he's like
I
pushing
think
his
yeah.
boundaries
Sort of
all the
having
time.
having met him in person, that's sort of just what he's like.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's a little bit true. Yeah.
yeah,
But like did you like I feel like there's kind of this way that YouTubers go a lot of the time. I don't know if you fall into this category because I
yeah,
imagine you might have been a little more of like a slow rise.
yeah.
But like for me
I mean,
and for
ouch,
like
but yeah,
yeah, and for a few people sort of that I know, it's like you try a bunch of things, nothing works, and then all of a sudden you do one thing and it skyrockets and you get like this kind of like, oh my goodness, I'm overnight famous on the internet thing. And then it's really hard to pull yourself back and not just like try to
do
do
that. Yeah,
that forever, you know, like
yeah.
expand yourself.
And I still definitely had that. I mean, like I was making videos for I think 2 years. So I was making videos for about publishing for about a year and a half, and then I stumbled on the song analysis idea,
Mm,
and it was my dad's suggestion actually to give him credit. But like he suggested when Leonard Cohen passed away, it's like, oh, Leonard Cohen's famous song Hallelujah, it describes the harmony in the lyrics,
yeah,
and that's really interesting. So what harmony is that? What is a major minor
yeah.
fall or a major lift? And it turns out those aren't actually technical terms, but he didn't know that, and it was led to an interesting sort of delve into the
Yeah.
harmony.
Goes like this: the fourth, the fifth, the minor fall. I don't know why there's a fall there. Minor fall, the major lift.
Yeah, that I'm not entirely sure. Like that, my working theory is that it has more to do with sort of the key, because sort of I think that a lot of that song plays with sort of the interaction between the keys of A minor and C major.
Mm,
Like it's pretty clearly C major, but it flirts with A minor in some interesting
yeah,
ways.
especially in the chorus.
Uh, and then
Yeah, yeah,
so then I think that's sort of less sort of falling because the harmony rises, the melody rises, everything goes up. And so I think the fall is more about falling back into that minor tonality than it is falling in any sort of like directional sense.
like an emotional fall.
Yeah.
Like, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's my theory anyway. But anyway, so I started doing those, and then like about 6 months later, this was Chris Cornell passed away, and I was like, obviously, like Soundgarden was a big deal to me, and so I was just like, I'm gonna do a video about Black Hole Sun,
Mm.
and that got recommended. That came out like the same day that I think it was Regina Spektor released her tribute cover of Black Hole Sun,
Ah,
and YouTube was like, "Oh, these are about the same thing. I'm just going to put this in the recommended sidebar for this."
you got this
And
wave.
so suddenly, yeah, it just took off, and and I took off. It went like 50,000 new subscribers in like a couple months or something.
Mm.
Like that's on YouTube scales not huge, but like
But
relative
it's
to what
still
I was
fifty
doing, yeah,
thousand people to you, an
yeah,
individual who
yeah,
previously did not have that.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it's sort of like all of a sudden, like I had this video that was getting like over 100,000 views, and like and at the time that was like ridiculous. And so like I still sort of had to consciously over time, and I still have to just be like, I'm not just gonna make song analysis videos.
Yeah.
I don't want to just make song analysis videos. If I just make song analysis videos, I'm gonna get bored and stop making videos. And so just like that knowledge that like fundamentally that's kind of what my audience wants of me, a lot of them.
Mm.
And they want me to make song analysis videos. There's a lot of people who only watch those. But like I feel like for my long-term sanity and for my long-term sustainability, I don't think that I can just do that. And I think that, I have a not insignificant audience that appreciates the other stuff too.
Mm.
I don't want to throw them under the bus or anything. And I'm glad they're there. I feel like, sometimes there is that tension of just like, I know which videos I could make to get more views,
Yeah.
and I'm not always going to make them. Anytime I want, I can get a couple 100,000 views by making a video about Led Zeppelin. Like that's not, I know that this isn't like, it's not a hard code to crack,
Yeah.
or Pink Floyd or whatever. And just like, but it's more interesting to me to sort of spend more time looking at other things too. And I think it's also better, like it results in better analysis because I'm like spending more time reading about other models and spending more time thinking about like the song I'm doing this month. I sort of had to bust out some techniques that I learned like a month ago for a video I was making.
Mm.
And so
Yeah,
like
well,
if I
I think
hadn't,
like
yeah,
also the more like I guess hard theory type
yeah,
things that like won't go viral. There is a way in which I don't know, Grant from Three Blue One Brown makes this point a lot that like we're still, even though we're 15 years along on like this YouTube thing, we're still very much at the beginning of like taking all of human knowledge and putting it on, putting in this new medium. And like
yeah,
those of us who are doing it right now kind of have this opportunity to be like the standard of like this might be the reference on this topic for the rest of time until there's another like Gutenberg like shift in the medium. And
yeah,
I think it's worth thinking about that and like taking it as, oh wow, like that I like there's a bit of a responsibility there of like,
yeah,
do this well, and also like an opportunity to think, beyond like the 2 week spike that this is going to have, like is this something that people are going to reference back to, in 5 years or in 10 years?
yeah. And just yeah, have, and you never know, like with videos that can just like sit there for like 6 months and then blow up for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah.
YouTube is absurdly opaque, and you never know what it's gonna do. Like I, for the longest time, like that my top, like I would go like look at my videos assorted by views and look at my top whatevers, and they would all be song analyses.
Yeah.
And like right now, I
But
don't even think
that's to be
yeah,
expected,
yeah,
right? Like it's
yeah,
the same way that all of my top videos are like they're pops, they're
yeah,
whatever viral pop song I was doing, right? Like
yeah,
if there was something that was the flavor of the day and I managed to hit it, which is fairly rare,
yeah,
because it has to be the flavor of the year before my
yeah,
production
yeah,
schedule lets me
yeah,
actually get around to make something. But like
yeah,
those aren't my favorite videos. Like I'm proud of a lot of them, but the ones that
yeah,
keep me going are the ones where I'm like pushing and experimenting and like
yeah, and
trying
that's
something weird a lot of the time.
yeah. And
I don't know.
the thing is, like when I look at like my top stuff now, like the second place one is not a song analysis video anymore.
Hmm.
It's like it's a video I made about writing lyrics,
Okay.
and there's a lot of stuff on that. Like so, look at like because YouTube sorts like 30 videos on per page,
Okay.
and so I'll just look at that first page just as a sense of like what I've been most successful with,
Right.
and like that is getting less and less song analyses. Like there's
Hmm.
more other stuff that I'm making because I think partly I'm getting better at making things at like I mean, I'm getting better at titles than thumbnails, is what it is. Like, let's not pretend that YouTube is more complicated than that.
That's
But
definitely, yeah.
yeah,
That's
I'm
definitely
getting better
possible.
at like promising a story in that and then delivering.
But yeah,
And
and it's
so,
also that people like, I don't know, people are looking for like, I don't know, a more powerful motivator than I want to learn something interesting is I want to learn a skill or like something that like
yeah,
there's some facet of myself that I'm trying to improve or know, and like that's what I get out of your. So like I'm definitely one of those people that like if I see you put up a song analysis video, I'm like, okay, that's kind of interesting. But if I see you make a video of like, here's this strange alternate way to look at music, I'm like, click right now and watch the whole thing. So yeah, I don't know. Like
Yeah.
for me, I'm trying to improve myself and like my understanding of how this medium works. A lot of by medium, I mean like
Yeah.
music.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of comments in the chat. I want to make a note to the people in the chat. I know that I've been patronizing you with these nice hydration tones where you can reach down and get your bottle of water and take a sip. But also, you're allowed to drink without me playing the hydration tone. This is not an exclusive thing. If I'm having a conversation and I want to keep the conversation going, you don't have to you don't have to be parched and dying because I have not yet played the magical notes. You are the master of your own destiny.
Yeah.
You can do what you want. You can take 2 sips or 3. It's crazy.
Whoa. Let's not get out of hand here.
The world is under your control. Existence precedes essence, and most of your opportunities will go unrealized. So take charge of whatever ones you can. This has been your hydration moment. Cory, what are you excited about to like analyze and figure out and talk about these days? Like what are you looking at right now?
I mean, I don't know. I recently, like I said, I don't plan that far ahead, but I recently did a video about Philip Tagg's loop function model. Sort of a way of
that.
Maybe I was about to.
The loop function model that I know is this function model that I know is this function model that I know is this. It's about as far as I go in loops.
Yeah.
So,
but no, it's a sort of a way of taking sort of the harmonic language of 4-chord loops and sort of approaching them on their own terms instead of trying to like take, classical or jazz ideas and sort of graft them onto this uniquely, or not uniquely, but like this famously pop phenomenon. And
right.
the way that pop musicians use these chords is not the same as the way that classical musicians did. And sort of, I mean, and I would argue personally, I think this is I'm a little bit less radical than Tag would be on this point, but I would argue that like a lot of what we have is sort of still evolutionarily linked. It's sort of developed ideas from those initial ideas. I didn't mean to repeat myself, but it's sort of stuff progresses. Music evolves from past music, and so it's not like this is a fundamentally new just thing that came out of nowhere.
Right. It's easy to only see what's different and ignore the multitude of things that are the same. For example, that you're still using the same chords.
And that you're, but like, and so the idea though is that it sort of like looks at 4-chord loops as sort of each chord in the loop has like a different job depending on its position.
Okay.
Instead of sort of depending on what the chord is. And so then like you have what he calls the tonic chord, which is sort of your home base. And then you go to the outgoing chord, which takes you away, the medial chord, which is sort of the furthest point, and then you have the incoming chord, which points you back. And so the ways that these chords sort of go in a circle, and what they can do and how those different functions can interact with each other. It's really interesting. It's a really flexible model.
Okay, so do that again. So if we're doing like the axis of awesome, the most basic 4 chords.
Yeah.
So this is the tonic chord.
Tonic. Yep. Yeah.
And then you
leave
jump
the
out
outgoing chord.
into the outgoing chord.
Yep. Which then takes you to the medial chord.
And you said this is like the sort of like the furthest away.
Yeah, so the furthest harmonic, not necessarily like in terms of notes or whatever, but that's sort of in terms of the harmonic effect. That's the idea of medial function, is that it's far away, it's distant, it's sort of you can think of it as like a secondary location, right?
It's like it's a little harder to jump right from this back to that. Like it's a little odd. It's in some ways it's too close in a way that like doesn't lead properly.
Yeah.
So you take that and then you get this like bridge back to the tonic again.
And that points you back.
Yeah. It's interesting how like that's a loop where depending on the song, different ones of those chords serve different functions, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
X
like you can.
often plays with that when they're doing like they suddenly switch into, which is the
Yeah,
same chord
the same,
pattern,
but yeah,
just
minor.
starting
Yeah,
on the minor,
yeah,
but the exact same chords.
but the
So
same
in that
respect.
case,
Yeah,
your far away chord has a
yeah. And so it sort of emphasizes a point that Tag argues is that in a lot of times if you have like what he calls shuttles, which are like two chord loops, so you
mm,
go back and forth between two chords, sometimes you have a clear one of those that's the root.
mm,
And you can listen to this and be like, we're clearly in G and we are going to D or whatever.
right.
But like often if you listen to those, it's not super clear. Like it's sort of more about occupying the space between the chords than it
Yeah.
is this clear directional motion. And I think that a lot of like classical and a lot of jazz theory assumes a sense of directionality to harmony, that things are trying to lead you somewhere, and that's not necessarily how modern musicians use chord loops. They're
Okay.
sort
So,
of
so
more, yeah.
this is like the Sweet Home Alabama problem.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
Which is like is the Sweet Home Alabama chords.
Yeah.
Sweet Home Alabama. So the question that
Yeah.
has been bandied around music Twitter and a
Yeah.
little bit of YouTube is it in the key of D? Whatever. Or is
Yeah.
it in the key of G?
Yeah.
Did you have a strong opinion on this before you started looking into chord loops?
So I tend to hear it more in G, if I'm being honest. So I tend to hear it
So
as 5/4/1.
landing on there. And that's
Yeah,
your,
that feels more right to me naturally, but I can hear it either way. And
okay.
that's part of there's good evidence in the song for both interpretations,
Mm.
because the melody, I want to say Ronnie Van Zant, but the singer, his melody seems to revolve around D. But when you get to the solo, where I'm completely blanking on the guitarist's name, but he plays his solo in G, and so it's, yeah, so
Something
the
like
whole
that,
thing
yeah.
revolves around G in that case, and so he's thinking of it in G, but the singer seems to be thinking of it in D,
Mm.
and like, I mean, the short answer that I think most music theorists will give you is that it's both and neither.
Yeah.
Like, we're all pretty sure it's not in C. Like that's the one chord everyone agrees is almost certainly not the root.
Can I hear it in C?
Just C, Liddy.
Nope.
No.
I can't do it. What would be like C Lydian?
Yep, that'd be.
No, I
Who
don't know.
knows?
Yeah.
Maybe make it work if you really tried, but that would take practice. But most of us agree it's not that. But there's the general idea is that like, you see people arguing about like, is it D, is it C, and I think most theorists would say, it's, if you can't figure it out by listening, then it's kind of neither, kind of both, and
Yeah.
that's sort of a better way to think about it than forcing it. Although there's partly, I think, a result of sort of especially classical mentalities is that like a lot of classical music, not all of it, but a lot of classical music is very key focused.
Mm.
Like you look at like these very specific structured modulation patterns where you
Well,
go from one
just the
key
way
to
the
another.
staff
And
is written out. It's like at
yeah,
the beginning of every line, I
yeah,
give you the sharps or the flats, and that tells
yeah,
you this is the key that we are in. And like
exactly.
that's the
Yeah,
way that you're supposed to think about that whole phrase when you're looking at it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's just like it gets, and that the way the staff is written out is developed classically
Mhm.
within the, actually before the classical period usually for the most part, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
If we get into like the Ars Nova and everything.
I
But
got into an argument with my choir, well, I don't know, a discussion with my
yeah,
choir mates a little while ago because we had a song that kept modulating sharper, to the point where I think it was in like it was in C sharp major,
sure.
which I believe is that's the one with all of the sharps.
That's the one with all the sharps. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was telling them, like, asking them, what is the difference between C sharp major and D flat major?
Yeah.
And as like it was interesting because the people who were like formally trained really felt the difference between those
Yeah.
two, whereas I don't really. Like, I have no
Yeah.
reason. I don't really know why you can't modulate from like G sharp or whatever F sharp major or G
Yeah.
sharp major to C sharp major to D sharp or D flat major or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, there's this circle of fifths that people try to keep where you increase the sharps.
Yeah.
To me, it's sort of an arbitrary construct, but
I mean, it is and it isn't. I think mostly in terms of the way I think of it, I tend to think very enharmonically as well, which is the
Hmm.
fancy word that musicians use for when two different names for the same sound, just
Okay.
in case anyone watching the stream doesn't know that. But we call those, so like C sharp and D flat are enharmonic.
Meaning
So
they're
if
the
you see,
same. They're the same note, at
yeah,
least on a keyboard. So this
on
is
a
C.
keyboard, yeah. So
This is C sharp, and this is D. This is D flat.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the note halfway between them in equal temperament. Again, if we go back to just intonation, then they are legitimately different notes.
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of where like classical theorists get the sense that this distinction matters, is that like in other tunings it does, and it can be important whether you're like a perfect fifth above F sharp or a perfect fifth below A flat. Sorry, I don't know why I blanked on that, but yeah,
That's
but
fine.
it's just
I'm
which
hardly
of those.
following you when you jump around in mental intervals because I don't like. For me, I just it's
Yeah.
qualia of tones more than it's a particular like name.
It's interesting, but yeah, no, for me it's like almost not sound in my head. It's more geometric.
Hmm.
Uh, but anyway, so the point is just like there are differences in like older tuning systems, and so I think that people who work with older music care more about the distinction, and that sort of carries through in a lot of ways in sort of discussions with classically trained people who tend to think in terms of classical vocabulary even when they're looking at non-classical music. And that can lead to problems, but it's also, I mean, there are good reasons to think of them as different notes sometimes. More often than not, in my experience, it doesn't matter, but that's because my experience is very founded around rock and pop and equal temperament in general.
Yeah. Do you what like this like loop construction
Yeah.
for pop songs? What's the appeal to you? Like what does it sort of enable you to do or think about?
So I think it sort of makes things more flexible. I think that, when you're doing there's a lot of songs like, because you have only four chords that you're looping over and over, you can do things that don't really fit with how those chords are supposed to be used. And so like what's one
Do you have
good
an example of that?
The example I usually hear quoted is Sir Duke,
Okay.
by the chorus of that. Yeah, that chord
is it a major or minor?
I think it's major.
Yeah.
Yeah, let me just Google Sir Duke chords.
I think that's right. Yeah.
It's says F. Wait, that doesn't sound right. It says F minor 7 flat 5. I could be wrong. I don't.
Okay, I
don't know.
was doing it in C. It's probably in B, right?
It's in B, yeah.
Okay. I don't know.
But anyway, the point is that chord is like, the rest of it is like a 2-5-1 in B.
Yeah.
And so you can look at that and be like, well, that makes perfect sense. It's easy to. This seems really wrong. Sorry,
because it feels like I get what you, I think Vox did Earworm did a piece on Sir Duke. It was like like you can play that melody with like, which is like a very
that
like
sounds way more
pattern.
correct than what I'm looking at. But yeah,
no, but that's the pattern that you might expect. It's like a do 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 ba do ba do ba do, right? But the one that actually is that instead of going there, he goes all the way to the tritone.
And so sort of trying to figure out what that is in a way that fits with conventional like functional harmony is really complicated, and is really difficult to sort of label as a meaningful thing that actually explains what you're hearing. So the loop function model lets you just say like, okay, that's the outgoing chord. And you can look at how it behaves relative to expected behaviors of outgoing function. But you have sort of a grounding of just like, why is this working? And the main thing is it's taking you away, and it's a very like, it's not strong harmonic motion from the tonic is sort of one of the like fundamental parts of outgoing function is that the tonic almost never sets it up unless everything is setting everything up, which you'll see in like the Axis of Awesome 4-chord loop. Every chord is either a step or a perfect fifth away from the next chord. And that's not true. Sorry. There's the medial going to the incoming is a major third. But anyway, if you look at like the Andalusian cadence, for instance, that's one. 1 minor, flat 7, flat 6, 5.
You have to slow
sorry.
that down for me.
C minor, B flat major, A flat major, G major.
All right. That thing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Hit the
So
road
you
check.
yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that sort of, it's classic from flamenco music, but gets used a lot in rock and pop.
Yeah.
It's sort of alluded to in Hotel California, for instance. They don't quite play it. They play an elaboration of it, but that's sort of the example I think of anyway. First,
but theirs is mostly a because if you do every second note of a circle of fifths, then you get that kind of structure, right?
Yeah.
So, and what they're doing is more like oh no, it's not a circle of fifths, is it?
It's a circle of fourths.
Yeah.
Well, that not quite, because then you're going from the
no. It's not
from the A flat to B. Yeah.
It's just like a walk down, like
Yeah, it's a walk down the minor scale, is what it is.
Yeah.
But the
one of the weirdest chord loops that I think about and I'm confused about them. I don't know. Maybe this theory would have some insight. "Rock with You" by Michael Jackson. Because it's like, what is it? So it's like the sort of like a, so it's like a plagal cadence. Like that feels like the dominant, the tonic chord is this one.
Yeah.
But it's going from the minor 4 to like stepping up from the flat 7 to the 1. But then the second time, and it's like, whoa, where did that come from? And then it goes right back to this again. But I think it actually, so then you're like, instead of going from this kind of like, whatever that is, that's
the backdoor resolution, the flat 7
backdoor resolution. It's actually doing backdoor to stepping up a different, like back to a different backdoor chord.
Wrong, yeah. Well, I say wrong, but but yeah, to sort of overshooting. Yeah. And so getting that lift that I think,
Yeah, but that kind of, mostly, particularly that like, what is it?
Going to
that thing.
The flat 2 major.
And then like that's brilliant to me, and it's like, it's weird that it works.
Yeah.
Because it kind of does give you this momentum of like, the first time there's all night and then sunlight. It's like, oh, okay, we're
you get that. Yeah. It's more less about where it's coming from and more about sort of going back a couple more, sort of, and looking at its relationship to the chord at the end of the last phrase.
Yeah.
And which, I mean, I guess you could sort of, if you looked at it as starting on 1 instead of starting on 4, then that becomes 5 and flat 6, which becomes easier. But I think when you say, I think I would agree off the top of my head without listening to the song, that it does sound more like the final chord is the 1. So it would be like 4 flat 7 1 makes more sense to me.
Yeah, well,
it's my recollection.
Like the rest of the song kind of like it's one of the songs that feels like it's always playing around without hitting the actual tonic, like especially in it's like feels like it's gonna go. Oh, that actually feels like it's going there. So that's weird. So that.
Yeah.
But then I don't know. That's one of those songs that like kind of, it's like Sir Duke for me. Like it kind of baffles my description of it.
And it's one of those things like I think that a lot of that comes from this very sort of classical idea that sort of the central fundamental part of a piece of music is the key.
Yeah.
And that sort of what matters is this relationship between the chords and the notes you're hearing and this sort of imagined tonal center, which a lot of pop music doesn't really respect in the same way. Like it's not unusual to see pop music that has a clear root. Like I'm not pretending that that's not the case, but like there's still,
it's in a way it's the simplest thing to come up with.
Yeah.
You know, if you were raised on any sort of Western tradition of music, especially if if you were raised on the type of music that is made for babies, usually there's a very clear tonal center.
Very clear, yeah. A lot of that stuff's really old too, which is part of why. But you have these things where like there's this clear what am I saying? So hold on, let me construct a thought before I start talking, because otherwise it's going to be gibberish.
Sounds good.
But no, I think that if you look at a lot of modern music, there just isn't as strong an emphasis on those sorts of behaviors that lead to a strong tonality. So you can sort of label a tonal center and be like, this is in G or whatever, and then go and put like, okay, so if this is in G, then this is the 3 chord and whatever. But like, that doesn't really tell you as much about what it's doing as sort of putting those labels on like a Mozart piece might.
Yeah.
You know, where you come in and be like, well, I'm saying this is the 5, and that tells you a lot about what set it up, where it wants to go, what's going to happen. And then we go, okay, it's the 5 going to the 6, and that means something.
Yeah.
But like in a lot of more modern music, it doesn't necessarily, to just say like, okay, this is the 4. It's like, okay, cool, but what is that? What is that 4 doing? Where is it going? There's a lot less sort of conventional behavior that we can sort of rely on. And again, it still shows up. Like, that's not to say that this is not a thing, but especially in sort of modern, like, popular music, you do see a lot of places where it's just like, this chord doesn't make any sense from a traditional classical model, and so we need other models. And that's sort of one of the things that excites me about the loop function model, is that it gives me a way to talk about these chords and talk about these progressions in a way that doesn't assume that there's something they're not.
Yeah, because it seems like music theory is kind of like linguistic theory, in that it more follows practice, right? Like, it's not prescriptive. You're trying to figure out what people are doing as opposed to telling them what they should be done.
That's how I think music theory should be, yeah. And that's how I think most modern theorists would agree with you.
Okay.
Like, there's certainly hasn't always been that, and isn't universally that. There's a lot of, especially historically, there's been a lot of prescriptivist theory that says, you know, if we go back to like the harmonic monists versus dualists, that was a prescriptivist argument. That was the question of like, which of these is correct, instead of which of these I think feels more right. And so it becomes, that sort of comes back again also to the question of sort of employing scientific approaches, because a lot of these attempts to employ scientific approaches are attempts to objectivize music, and to say like, this is fundamentally true, this timbre is the better timbre or whatever. And so like, but I think for the most part, most modern music theorists, at least that I know, the ones that I interact with, tend to take that more descriptivist, postmodernist approach, where it's just like, look, stuff is happening, our job is to react to that and describe it, and tell you what it is, rather than tell you what it should be and whether it's doing that correctly.
Because it seems like with modern music, a lot of the time, I think it's not so much people, like, there are people bucking trends, but I find the people who buck trends are more like the weird, like, modern, like, art composers. You know, they're like trying to, they're like, okay, what happens if I'm tired of everything I've ever heard? What if I do 12-tone serialism? What if I play with the radio, whatever? But like, the people who are making pop music, they're not rebelling against anything. They just don't know it. It's like, they haven't learned functional harmony. Like, my sister gave me the Dead Mouse masterclass for Christmas, and watching Dead Mouse work, like, I don't think he knows any of this theory, but he has kind of a version of this like loop idea. Like, everything he does is based on loops, but you know, he's not even like the way he describes intervals is not even correct. Like, he's thinking of them as absolute semitones. So this to Dead Mouse is a seventh. Because there's 7 semitones, and because he's seen it on a piano roll, and there's 7 slots away from each other. And then he has this idea of, okay, well, like, at the end of the loop, it has to sound nice when it goes back to the start of the loop, and like kind of connect in this, like, in a way that feels natural. But he's just like, look, I'm just drawing notes. Like, I don't know what this chord is. I don't really know what key I'm in. I'm going to draw these notes, and then I'm going to keep changing them until I like the sound. And then like, something emerges out of that that's like, it's atheoretical. Like, it's whatever theory it has is entirely subconscious.
And I think that that's an important distinction between those two things, is that like, you have theory, like explicit, declarative theory,
like
but
atheoretical in its production. Not that it can't be analyzed.
He's not thinking about it, but it's just, well, I also think I just, as that there's, existing in a musical culture means absorbing that musical culture's vocabulary. And so, like, for instance, you know, if you go back to, you know, the like the 60s or whatever, the doo-wop changes were everywhere. And so, if you sat down at a yeah.
Yeah.
So if you just sat down with your guitar and this is one of the things I see a lot where people will like sit down at their guitar and be like, who have no background, and more often than not, what they'll do is they'll play conventional chord progressions, and they'll figure out and be like, I just figured out that if I go like 1 6 minor 4 5 1, it sounds great. Or they probably aren't even using numerals; they're just G, E minor, C, D. Yeah. Sorry, but like having that. Just having that vocabulary, because that's what you have learned sounds good.
Yeah.
And then when you sit down to play it, it just comes out. But I think in addition to sort of like, people not necessarily knowing it, there's also an extent to which I think people just get bored of it. Like, I think that's one of the things, like if you look at modern music, like if you look at classical music, the 5-to-1 resolution, like D to G or whatever, in the key of G, that's like, it's a huge thing. It's a really important thing. And then jazz music too, that it takes on either like different roles, but it's still a very important part of the structure. But and if you look at like modern popular music, it's really hard to find 5-1 resolutions. Like, they're out there, they exist, but they don't get played very much. And that's partly because I think to a lot of people, they just sound dated. Like you play them and like, okay, that sounds fine, but it's like, it's bland, it's boring, I've heard it. And so you want to be like, okay, well, what do I do that maybe sounds a little bit spicier, that sounds a little bit more interesting? What other chord could I play there? And so you may not know, like, oh, this is a 5-1 and it sounds dated because it was the sort of resolution that Mozart used or whatever. You may not have that level of like knowledge about what you're doing, but you have this sense that if you just do it, it just doesn't sound great. It's sort of in the same sort of like jazz players will talk about like not playing the butter notes, which are sort of the notes that are like good over a specific chord, like avoiding the root and whatever, and playing fancy notes over it.
Spicy and interesting, and makes you not a cliche.
You go like, ooh, I didn't think that would work, but then it does. And that's like, ooh, I didn't think that would work, but then it does, is like the definition of jazz, more or less. But
although I also think with like loop songs, there's a way that a good loop is one that always feels like it could go again, right? And like there's such a strong resolution to like what am I doing? Like so like in the like, it feels like if you go there, the song's over, whereas if you just repeat it endlessly, you could have this on a loop for 10 minutes, or you can fade it into another song, or
that's a large part, and that's partly why I think a large part of why I think that like plagal cadences, which is the resolution from 4-to-1, which in C would be F to C. You have and it gives you the sense of like, oh, we've landed, we've arrived, but it doesn't feel as final. It doesn't feel like, oh, we're at rest in the same way that 5-to-1 does. And so I think part of why that's become such a popular thing, and you see like a lot of 4-chord loops will end on the 4-chord going back to 1, just because that feels like you can keep going, like you're not done yet, like it's time to keep moving on. And that's why it's a really popular incoming chord. It's a really good way to resolve without losing your momentum.
Okay.
And I think loops are really about maintaining momentum, like you said.
Pump you up. And also get it stuck in your head. Like if you've got a little bit of the chorus of a song in your head that's got a perfect loop that never ends, that's going to be in there all day.
Yeah, and you never get that finality, and it's But no, I would agree.
Okay, so loops. You got anything else in the pipeline?
I mean, right now I'm I tend to focus one at a time. So I'm working on a song analysis video this week. Okay. I tend not to spoil what those songs are.
Sweet. I won't ask you to do that here.
I will say it is a band I probably should have talked about a long time ago.
All right.
Finally getting to. But beyond that, like I don't know. I sort of like play around with like what different ideas, but mostly like I decide what I'm doing a video on next week on Friday. It'll be like, oh, Thursday, Friday, I'd be like, okay, well, time to decide which of these ideas to do.
Yeah.
It's sort of been mulling over some more like philosophical things that drifting more in that direction. One of the things I've been thinking about is sort of the idea that to go back to some stuff we were talking about before, like the whole like idea that music is fundamentally just sound waves, and why I think that's not necessarily a good way of viewing it.
Hmm.
I've been thinking of. I'm not sure when that video is going to come out or if it's going to come out. I need to sort of one of the things, like when I have an idea for a video, I then have to come up with an actual take.
Yeah.
I have to be
Yeah.
like, okay, this is what I think. Like I can't just like stream of conscience like a rant about it. I have to like be like, this is where I want to go. This is what I want to set up. And so like, in the video I did recently about sort of like what music theory isn't, that one, looking at like different ideas, I knew that I wanted to structure that as a way to sort of build into the argument that music theory isn't a science,
Hmm.
and sort of build into that from supporting arguments. And so like I have a lot of like things where like, oh, this would be a really fun thing to talk about, but I don't have a take yet. And so until I do, I don't know when I can actually make a video about it,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
It's
that's
I find
a very
often my
complicated way to
yeah.
dodge your
Well,
question,
often
but
my videos, I find that like they need to percolate for a long time. It's like there's something here that eventually will become
yeah.
there's a core that will become an actual product, but it needs to
Yeah.
sit. Maybe it's missing a piece that I'm going to find somewhere along the way while I do
Yeah.
other things. And I don't know. Yeah, that
Yeah.
makes
And
sense.
I think, I don't know. And partly like one of the reasons that I have stepped back from doing weekly videos to sort of taking 1 week off a month, or doing
Mm-hmm.
3 videos a month, which in some months is 2 weeks off. But one of the reasons I've sort of stepped back is just that like as videos have gotten longer to make because I'm making longer and longer videos, like I've sort of lost the time to research.
Mm.
And so like I haven't been able to like make what like delve into these complicated topics as much, and I've sort of had to rely more and more on stuff I remember from music school, or stuff that I can is in an area that I know well enough that I can start researching it and finish that research in a day or two. And so that has sort of cut me off from things, and that's part of why I've tried to reclaim that extra week, is just like set aside time to just go read more challenging things, read more things that I can't absorb in a day or two and that I really need to sit with. And I think like the loop function video, for instance, I don't think I could have done if I hadn't had that time, because I had to like really read it, and not just like read what he was saying, but because it was so different from how I was taught to think about music, I sort of had to sit and absorb it and like let it, so like I said, percolate and think about what I'm doing, and in a way that I hadn't really been giving myself time to. So I just, hopefully in the future I will have more time. Like there's a lot of books, like I've been meaning for a long time to just sit down and read George Russell's Lydian Chromatic Concept.
That sounds like a mouthful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've tried before. I've sat down like I'm gonna make a video about this, and I've sat down and started reading. It's like, I'm not gonna make a video about this week.
So this is a
This
very
is
like
just
is this in it like is this one of these sort of like Bible like tomes of music theory?
yeah. I mean, it's one of those, like, it's really foundational to a lot of jazz theory,
Hmm.
in a way that sort of it doesn't get as much credit for as it probably deserves these days. I think it's sort of, it's not that people have forgotten it. It's just like it doesn't get referenced as much because there's alternate models that I think
Hmm.
are simpler.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, if you look at like modal jazz, especially, like he had a huge influence on his theories had a huge influence on how modal jazz developed. And I think sort of going back and understanding from primary sources what his thing is, but it's like it's so, it's not even like necessarily super long. It's just super dense and like weirdly spiritual about itself, in a
Hmm.
way that's just like, a lot of theory stuff winds up
Yeah.
getting that way, because you get these people who just like come up with this new revolutionary model, and they're convinced that this is the model, this is the one that like defines music.
Yeah.
And
I mean there
so
are science texts that have a
yeah.
similar vein. Like if you've ever read Gödel Escher Bach, which I guess sort of like spans our two
Yeah.
worlds a little bit.
Yeah.
It has very much that vibe. Where like I started reading it, and I haven't gotten through it yet. I've gotten a lot further than I had before, but the first time I began reading it, it's like, it starts with these like strange sort of vignettes of like Achilles and a tortoise like philosophizing about things, and
Yeah.
I had to stop and the sort of like, I think I went to Twitter and I asked people like, "Hey, this is a smart audience. Is this book like, is this worth reading?" Like, because it's very hard for me to tell at this point like whether it's worth kind of the task of getting into this person's
Yeah.
world. I'm like getting, because obviously this is a book where it's this person wants me to take time to like get to know them and their style
Yeah.
and like absorb and the main takeaway from Twitter was, yes, it is worth it. You've got to power through. So I still
Yeah.
do have to power through on that one.
And I mean, I think if everyone was good at communicating with the general audience in a clear, unambiguous way,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have a job, right? Like, yeah,
That's true. It's
my
our
entire
job to,
job is reading these like complicated things and be like, how do I explain this to someone who doesn't already get it?
yeah.
And like, I went and looked up like a while ago, dug up like a really obscure text. It's not like super obscure, but like by like a guy called Arno Lenfi that sort of laid out this entire harmonic theory of Bela Bartok's music.
Okay,
And like
that's
I
not a
had to
thing I
go.
know at all. I don't
That's
think I know a
fine.
single piece that Bela Bartok wrote.
Yeah, he in Bluebeard's Castle, I think. Anyway, he, but I know his name more than I know like a lot of his compositions.
Okay.
But it was just this entire like theory of just like his harmonic language that led to this entire like whole geometric mathematical argument about how chords relate. And it's just like was reading this and it was just like, I mean, I get what you're saying, but like I had to like translate it back in a lot of, because there's, I don't know, partly music theory sort of coils in on itself a lot, and like we have so many terms and so many like ideas that we're like assumed that we all know before we get into like
Hmm.
new ideas, and just be like, this is all built on this previous thing. And I'm not going to take time to explain what dominant function means, because if you're reading this like advanced theory text, you know what dominant function means, right?
Yeah.
And so all these different things that you just, it's assumed everyone knows. And that gets more and more as you get into the more and more complicated stuff, as you know, tends to happen, because they can't start every book from first principles. But like I sort of have to start every video from basically first principles.
Yeah.
Like I make some very basic assumptions about
You,
like
you're
musical
presuming that
knowledge,
most
but
the people who come into your videos haven't necessarily watched the rest of
right,
your videos most of the time.
right, yeah, for
Okay.
almost yeah. My assumption is that people know what scales are, what chords are, and what notes are, and that they know the basic examples of like all, all of those. Like they know what a major triad sounds like roughly. If I need you to care about the specific structure, then I will take the time to be like, okay, it's a major third and then a minor third, or it's a major third and a perfect fifth, however you want to think about it.
Yeah.
But like, I'm gonna like, from as much as I can, start from like, let's assume that you've learned how to play piano, sort of. You maybe have picked up a guitar and played a couple chords. And so the concept of a chord, the concept of a scale, these aren't new to you.
Hmm.
But like, beyond that, I'm not going to assume that you know functional harmony, because that's a more abstract theoretical thing. I'm not going to assume you know like chord extensions or like, you know, sus chords or anything like that. I'm just going to assume that you know like the very basics and then build from there to whatever idea I want to get you to. And that means that, and that's part of why my videos have been getting longer. It's just like if I get into a more complicated thing, I have to lay so much groundwork before I
Yeah.
get to the point where like this is the actual idea. But like I can't just assume that I can skip to this and have you be like, oh, that makes sense. Uh, so
Do you
like,
think there would be any room for like a music theory, or is there like a music theory version of what I do? Because it
um,
like what I'm doing, like maybe not precisely what I'm doing, but it strikes me that like what I'm doing is I'm basically using just like the emotional resonance of music to
yeah,
get people interested in like a science, like a science topic that, and like, okay, I'm gonna make clever lyrics and puns and whatever, like that's gonna be the
yeah,
thing. But it strikes me that like someone could make really interesting like art pieces that are music explaining music, and I don't
yeah.
know if that's
So
happened.
there, it does exist. The ones I'm aware of are fairly basic theory.
Okay.
You know, they'll be like, you know, the modes of the major scale, or like this is like
Mm,
one like famous one that I've seen. I say famous, you know,
mm.
known in music theory circles, is rewriting of chestnuts roasting over an open fire to sort of describe the intervals in the melody.
Okay.
Uh, and so that, you know, you can you can do stuff like that. I haven't seen anything that gets into like complicated music theory. I've mostly seen stuff that's
Oh yeah,
is
I think I
useful.
have
Yeah,
seen that one, right? It's like octave falling to the major third or something like that.
yeah, that one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and and it works. It's a nice sort of like mnemonic, but it I don't know of anyone doing it with like music theory beyond sort of what you get in like a 101, 102 class.
Yeah.
Sort of getting to like things like complex set theory ideas or like neo-Riemannian whatevers.
Yeah.
Or don't worry about what neo-Riemannian is. I don't have time to explain.
Well,
but
it certainly means something different than if you were in a physics class. I can tell
Yep.
you that.
Yep. No, we have a very different Riemann than you do.
Yeah. Well, you know, but
They're not even related as far as I know.
They both have toruses, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The Tonets can be written on a torus.
I'm gonna pretend that I actually understand what that means.
Yeah. No. The toruses are related to neo-Riemannian theory, and also related to.
Yeah.
What's your Riemann? Because ours is Hugo Riemann. Yours is.
Someone in the comments tell me what Riemann, what's our good old scientist Riemann. What his actual first name is Herman? I don't know. Cory, we have a little tradition here where we do the we have a theme song at the end that we're gonna do. So I'm gonna we're gonna submit to the chat who's clamoring for the theme song. We're gonna do the theme song. See if we can get it going. For the 44 of you that have stuck around, that are still watching us bang on about music theory, I'm afraid that we've probably lost some of the science crowd, but I do not care because this is actually, I think this is the funnest conversation that I've had in a while. But hold on, let's build up a loop. Here we go. There we go. Let's bring in the bass. All right, so the question is today, are we singing about science as we usually do, or are we singing about music theory? Because that feels like we should sing about the topic of the conversation. Let's sing about theory.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me.
Theory. We're gonna sing about theory of music. We're gonna sing about theory. We're gonna sing about theory of music. We're gonna sing about theory. We're gonna sing about theory of music. We're gonna sing about theory. There we go. We're gonna sing about theory. All right, what do we got here? We're gonna sing about. What should we sing about of theory today? We're gonna sing about a plagal cadence. I don't know. What other topics? I don't know them as well. Who's the name of the loop guy?
Philip Tagg.
Oh, yeah. We're gonna sing about Philip Tagg. You know his theory isn't kind of a drag, oh no. Helps you explain how to go and write a super sweet pop song. Yeah, oh. We're gonna learn about chord loops. They are better than more poop. That's not good. Oh, if you don't use them right, then you got it wrong. Yeah, let's see. Oh, 'cause when you got a tonic, oh, we're gonna go off it. And then we go back to the tonic. There's only two chords in this loop now, and the same loop bass going around them. But usually you have a tonic, and then a, what is it? Subdominant median. I can't remember what it is. Oh, the furthest away, and then a bridge back home. Oh no, that's what we sing about. We sing about theory. Oh yeah, we're gonna sing about theory. Ooh, yeah, music. We're gonna sing about theory. We're gonna sing about. What else did we talk about today? Music. We're gonna sing about
scientific conceptions.
Yeah, scientific conceptions of theory of music. In this stream, there has been a debate whether music music theory is here, innate, or whether it's outside and given to you by your society. Yeah. I think I have one view of this. Cory has another, but it's okay, I guess. 'Cause anyway, we can both enjoy conversing about it. Yeah. See, there is a thing called the harmonic series that goes a lot into my physical theories. But Cory would say even that is a result of your culture. If he is right, then you could enjoy Gamelan much better if you're a little boy or a girl or neither. But if you like it, you've been raised to, yeah, oh, you gonna sing about theory. Ooh, yeah. We're gonna sing about theory. Yeah. Music. We're gonna sing about theory. We're gonna sing about theory. All right. We're gonna sing about. Cory, I want to thank you for being on the stream today. We're gonna get people, as we usually do, in the chat. Can you just spam? Tell me who you are so I can shout you out here on the stream. We got Clever Goat, we got Iwajasic, we got Chino Hoshi. 47 of you that are still going. I want to see all your names. We got Raphael, Amalyrical, the Mamguzian, we got Same As, King Gaming, Beaker Rocket is here again. Ann Smith is back as always. We got Morgan Harris, Valdemar Bunding Hansen. I don't know how to pronounce that particular character. We got Mary Mead is back. We got Ignis, Alice Nouth is here, Ricky J, the Mamguzian, Philippa Beckman, Dylan Sprudwick, Daniel Anderson, thanks for stopping by. Lori Svensson's back. We got 13, Dancer Girl 13, Lou Rancoiset. I apologize for my pronunciation of that name. Quintopia is here, Jessica Cooper, Peter Borang, Sandra Whistler, A.A. Bowser is back. Non-Liquidian Dreamer. Hello, Laura. Good to see you again. Hecatonica Socoron is there, and I don't know what that is. Lucio24, thanks for stopping by. Quintopia, Sigma B, we got Andres Guzman. Everyone else seems to be repeats of whoever they are. So everyone give a big thanks to Cory once again. Cory, thank you so much for coming. It's been like
thanks for having me. It was fun.
This has been like I said, it's been a really, fantastic conversation. I get a lot more opportunities to geek out about science than I do to geek out about music.
Yeah.
But it's actually occupied like a lot more of my thought process this past year than science, which is probably one of the reasons for my minimal output on this stream. But, so
for sure,
we're gonna sign off. Is there anything you want to tell the folks about what's going on in your channel?
We do like 12-tone videos, youtube.com/12-tone videos. We do like a monthly, like I said, song analysis on usually classic rock, sometimes more modern stuff. Mostly not after the 2000s. I've tried some, but but more classic stuff. Rock is my main area, and then there's also other videos, like I was saying with Tim, that get into more hard theory. Those don't do as well. So, but if you want to check out, what video did I do last? What was the song I analyzed last month? I just did this. I forget.
I don't even know. I enjoyed your Elton John one that you did a little while ago.
Yeah. I did Benny and the Jets.
Yeah.
It was Comfortably Numb is closing in on 1 million views.
Nice.
So watch that before it crosses that, I guess.
Maybe get it over the line.
Yeah, we could be. But yeah, no, it's and that one's super old. Like that's from like 2017, I think. God, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah, well, it is like these songs. Yeah. If you don't pick a song that's the flavor of the month, then it really is evergreen, right? Like,
yeah,
we're gonna keep coming back and discovering it. So
yeah, that's the whole thing about it. That's part of why I sort of built my brand around dad rock.
Yeah,
it's just like dad rock is never going to go out of style. Yeah, the world will always have dads.
All right, Cory. Well, thanks for coming.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
Everyone, go and subscribe to Cory, and see you tomorrow. We've got I've got Grant from 3 Blue 1 Brown coming on Wednesday, but tomorrow I think I'm gonna do a solo show. So see you guys then. Have a good time. Bye, Cory.